VectorFX is a standalone generative AI program that uses text prompts to generate vector images in SVG format. Because it runs directly on your local device and not in the cloud, your creations are limitless and your data remains private and secure. With VectorFX, you can create all kinds of customizable, scalable vector graphics, from simple to complex, and the resulting SVG files can be brought into CorelDRAW or other vector editing software for further editing and refinement. Before we get started, if you're watching this video on YouTube, you'll find a link in the description below that will take you to our website. Here you'll find additional learning resources, the latest special offers, and more. Before you start using VectorFX, it's crucial to configure the program settings for optimal performance. When first installed, the default settings are the lowest, and it's important that the settings be updated to match your system. Be sure to read over the performance tips that appear when you first open the program. First, I'll open the Settings menu and choose AI Engine. This window has two tabs, and I'll start with Model Settings. The most important setting is Supported Processing Methods. I have an NVIDIA graphics card, so I'll choose CUDA, which means that my graphics card, and not my computer's CPU, will be used for processing. Image resolution determines the level of detail in the vector output and ranges from 512 to 1024. Choosing a higher resolution can help produce cleaner or more detailed vectors, but requires more processing time and power. Working with a lower resolution will speed up the processing time and still produce great results, just not as detailed or refined. The selected model is high quality, but future updates to VectorFX will offer additional models. If you make changes, be sure to click Apply to reinitialize the AI engine. Now let's look at prompt settings. The Inference Steps setting adjusts the number of steps taken to create the image. The more steps you take, the more impact it has on the results. Think of it like this. The longer you spend working on a piece of art, the more detail you'll put into it. This may not always mean better results, but you have more time to refine and add detail. I'll stick with the default of 25, which consistently produces good results with faster processing time. For text weight, the default of 7.5 is fine for most users. Increasing this value means that every part of your prompt will be represented very literally, which you may want to do if you plan to use very detailed, intricate prompts to generate very specific results. Lastly, we have batch processing. When enabled, VectorFX will generate 5 different options using the same prompt and settings. When disabled, you'll get one image at a time, and each of the outputs can have its own prompt and settings. This means you can iteratively tweak prompts and settings to compare results, and use the side-by-side options to gauge the impact of the prompt versus settings. Let's now open the Help menu. FAQ links to the VectorFX website with some frequently asked questions. Performance Tips opens the tips pop-up we saw earlier, and System Info opens a handy window with your computer specs. This is where I can see my graphics card, so I know to use GPU in model settings. Check for Updates is how you can check periodically for enhancements and new models, and About displays version details for the software and AI engine. Finally, I'll click Get Inspired. This opens the VectorFX gallery, and clicking on an image shows the prompt used to generate it with a Copy button. For my first design, let's say I want a cartoon bird, but I want to try out some different types of bird prompts. I'll start with the simple prompt of Cute, Colorful Cartoon Owl. High detail is off to save processing time, and I'll keep the rest of the settings at their default values. Seed is a random 10-digit number, somewhat like a unique artistic interpretation. If I wanted to replicate results, I'd need to use the same seed number along with the same set of slider values and identical text prompts. With the space for the first option selected, I'll click Generate to get my owl. The number of objects, or curves, and nodes appears just below. If I don't like this result and want to get something different, I'll get a new seed number and generate again. Now I want to try a different bird. I'll click into the space for option 2 and use the prompt Cute, Colorful Cartoon Parrot. I'll do the same for duck, eagle, and peacock. I can click each result to see its prompt, settings, unique seed number, and number of objects and nodes. I like how the owl turned out, so I'll click that option and adjust its settings. Moving the sliders doesn't require a regeneration. The adjustments occur in real time. I'll reduce detail, but not too much, to simplify the image with fewer objects and nodes. Increasing smoothing reduces the number of small objects, while increasing corner smoothing reduces the number of nodes by smoothing corners. With a high path coarseness, I can also reduce nodes. To save the owl image as an SVG file, I could click Save while that option is selected. That file could then be opened in CorelDRAW or another vector graphics program. To bring the image directly into CorelDRAW, I'll choose File, Edit with CorelDRAW. Without this direct import, I could also use File Open to bring in an SVG file. To see the components of this image, I'll open the Objects Docker or Objects Inspector on the Mac. When I use Ctrl-A or Command-A on the Mac to select everything, there are 163 objects selected, which matches the object number from VectorFX. Because these are vector objects, I can resize everything with no change to resolution. And I can easily make changes, such as deleting the background curve or changing fill colors. I'll select everything again and activate the Shape tool, and here are all the nodes produced by VectorFX. I can also use the Shape tool to move or adjust nodes as needed. Now I'll generate something a bit more complex. The prompt I used here is detailed illustration of a sunset, mountain range, waterfalls, vibrant colors, with terms separated by commas. When creating prompts, it's important to be concise and descriptive and not use any terms that conflict with one another. High detail is still off, and other settings are the default values. I used option 2 to see what I'd get with the same prompt and some negative terms. In the negative prompt field, I entered primary colors and trees so that the generated image would avoid saturated colors and not include trees. For option 3, I used the same prompt again, but added a few extra descriptive terms. I like the trees after all, and also the muted look, so the negative prompt this time only affected colors. For this result, I'll switch on High Detail, Generate again, and this is a vector image I could use for posters, merchandise, etc. For another common use case of VectorFX, I'll generate a simple logo. First, I'll go to the Settings, open Prompt Settings, and turn on Batch Processing so that I'll get 5 options with the same prompt and settings. My prompt will be silhouette of a bullhead, logo, with high detail disabled to keep the object count low. As each option is generated, when I see the one I like, I can click Stop to end the option generation. Before bringing one of the images into CorelDRAW, I'll adjust the settings to minimize object and node count while keeping enough level of detail. Here is a VectorFX produced SVG file of my logo, opened in CorelDRAW, and edited and cleaned up so that only black filled curves remain. To enhance my logo, I'll add a red ellipse with no outline, right-click and send the ellipse to the back of the page, and adjust. Just below, I'll add the brand name, a black rectangle, white text centered in the rectangle, and one more quantity text just below. Enhance and accelerate your design workflow with creative inspiration. VectorFX is a valuable addition to your graphic design toolkit, enabling you to turn your creative vision into fully editable vector graphics and making it easier than ever to produce custom designs for use in branding, marketing, and other professional design projects. This brings us to the end of this tutorial on VectorFX. If you've been watching this video on YouTube, you'll find a link in the description below that will take you to our website. Here you'll find additional learning resources, the latest special offers, and more.